Kylee Pena, who is, how would you describe your role?
I am a product marketing manager for professional editorial at Adobe, and that really means that I go and talk to people that are out editing and using our products, and then I bring all that feedback back to the people building the products. And then when they do what I say that they should do, I come and tell you all about what they did for you.
So Kylee is in a position to share really, I don't know if you say that here, we say in Britain from the coal face. So people, we have some weird phrases. So people who are actively making films in studios, independent, boutique houses, you name it, Kylee is engaging with them all the time, getting direct feedback about the ways that people are using technology to tell stories, and then working with Adobe, an enormous technology company, to bring new tools to life. We also have Sweeney.
Yeah, I've been producing independent film and going into producing unscripted as well for documentary style. But I have traveled the world in the last 3 years with a documentary called The Fixers. I'm the host of the show. I'm also a builder and a producer on it. And yeah, I have had the privilege of going into different communities and just being able to learn about the world and do something completely different from what I grew up doing. I started in professional theater, then I went into doing commercial television, little spots here and there. I'm from Mexico originally, so did a lot of telenovelas, got known as an actor, and then moved to the States, did some work here. And then I realized I wanted to be not just part of the table, but I wanted to build my own table as well and tell interesting stories, because as an actor you just embody so many different perspectives and how to see the world. And I thought, well, there's also a message, and I think I have a lot to say, and I thought producing was the way forward in terms of seeing the kind of stories and content that I thought were important to today's world, and also to connecting with incredible people and being able to collaborate a little bit more on the process as a whole, and not just in front of the camera. So yeah, that's my story.
So Andreas had an enormous breadth of experience as an actor on screen, and also increasingly working with crews and actively producing a wide range of projects. So you're both sides of the camera. And full transparency, we co-produced a feature film and survived, which is phenomenal. Lots of chocolate. Chocolate's the solution. So a real range of experience, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, and working with people and dealing with communication challenges, and often in tight budgets. Ramfis, how would you sum up what you do with your days and why it makes you happy?
Spend time with you, Maxim. Well, my responsibility, I feel, as a creative, is to leave the world touched, moved, and inspired. So I do that through, whether it's scripted and unscripted, leading stories that are women-led, BIPOC-led, and queer-led stories. And I do it all around the world. So about a little over a year ago, I launched a new company, Ramfis Productions, which is a global company with my brother and partner in crime, AJ Leon, who's from Cuba, and we focus on a lot of Caribbean, material. We had a huge year last year. We had a film that was at Sundance that later qualified for the Oscars. And then we had a documentary I did with Sean Paul and Saggy, which premiered at Tribeca. And we had another film that was released theatrically, a sci-fi queer film. And then we went into production on 2 feature films during a double strike, and shot 2 short films. So last year was really big, and this year will be even bigger. And besides making films, I work with the BFI. I'm an advisor for the British Film Institute. I work for the Sundance Film Institute. I work with South by Southwest. I'll be there in 2 weeks doing mentoring as well. And I consult for the studios like CBS and Paramount. And I have a newsletter sign up going around. So if anyone wants to sign up, I'm going to be doing like a free training, at the in about a month from now around short films. So that's floating around. But pretty much, I'm a storyteller, an educator, and I inspire the world.
Goodness, I remember when I first met Ramfis at was it at the Cannes Film Festival?
Yeah, 2019 Cannes.
2019. Yeah. And I remember watching him work and talking about his approach to producing films. And I remember thinking, one day I hope to grow up and be like Ramfis. And it's absolutely the planning and preparation. But I suppose broadly speaking, and Stephen mentioned this as well, we're storytellers, right? So you said you're a storyteller, and we're all working with this incredible medium, this extraordinary medium to tell stories in impactful ways, right, to cause change in the world. So I actually want to start with you on this panel, Ramfis. And Stephen spoke about this quite a bit as well. It's very interesting. When you're considering working on a project, when you're just looking at, do I want to invest my time and energy to raise the finance for this, to build the crew, put the team together, how do you know when there's an idea, even before a screenplay, how do you know when there's an idea that's worth making into a film?
That's a very good question, Maxim. Tough question. You know, I meditate on it. I speak to the universe. I look to see if there's signs. I look for signs, synchronicity. You know, I look at license plates, like whatever it is. You know, I look for a message to see, because when you're making a film, it's a marriage. You're in it for so long, and it's a strong commitment, and I have to be willing to work with a piece of material that I'm going to be glued to for the rest of my life. And the creatives as well, you know, is worth that time, because I'll never be able to get the time back. And then once I'm committed to it, I'll bounce it off my team members, people like Haley, I don't know where you are, Haley over there, you know, my team is a background of different people from all walks of life, from Korea to Romania, from a young 18-year-old to someone that's maybe in their early 30s, you know, a mixed bag, to see like what is their perspective, to make sure I'm not missing something, and to make sure I'm adding something of value.
It's fantastic. That is the most honest and authentic answer I think I've heard to that question. I've been having these sorts of interviews for over 20 years, and to meditate on it, to look for signs. And I suppose what that hints at to me is that you can't always be certain. We heard earlier from Danielle and Melanie and Stephen that you've got to make sure it's sellable, but ultimately you have to believe in the story itself, right? So I want to ask Andrea, I want to ask you a question, because you're sort of both sides of the camera with this. We mentioned earlier, again with Stephen, we were talking about the famous chicken and egg problem. You can't get the money without the cast, you can't get the cast without the money. I've tried hypnotism, doesn't work. So what do you think is a solution to finding ways to get the cast that you need for a project when you're not an experienced filmmaker, you don't have that network? As Stephen mentioned, you get one actor on board, they know all the other actors, but when you're not even at that stage, how do you find the right people to work with?
I think it takes one to know one, and what I mean by that is, if you walk into a room and you truly have a vision, you know what you're working towards, and you specialize in that. If you specialize in what you have to say, you're not trying to be interesting, you're not putting something on, but rather you're interested in what is going on around you. And when you're interested in other people, in the conversations that you're having, and in the message that you have, in the story that you're bringing to the world, or you're trying to bring to the world, then people sense that, people feel that, and because it takes one to know one, you'll find your tribe. You'll find who wants to work with you and who you want to work with. I think sometimes it's a little bit of a glow in the eyes. It's living from the inside out rather than the outside in. If you have something to say, if you're passionate about that, and you're truly working on it, you have your presentations, you're doing as many events as you can to develop the ideas further, see the different ways in, then yes, there's never going to be a set trajectory to get to the outcome, and you have to be comfortable with that and accepting and find your systems that go, okay, what is a sign that I'm going in the right direction? So the first answer would be to specialize, and the second answer would be to have systems in place for living a spontaneous lifestyle, meaning you have to be ready for the doors to open and the opportunities to come your way. And what that means is being over-prepared. Sometimes I have a list on my phone of the things that live in my car at all times. And I make sure that they are always there. Why? Because we're in LA, there's traffic, there's things going on. If I have a meeting all the way across town, I'm probably going to spend the whole day there, and I have to be ready to go if, my literary agent calls and he goes, hey, this meeting just came up across town, can you make it? And you go, okay, or my acting agent calls and I'm like, okay, yep, I got my tripod and my backdrop in the trunk. I'm gonna go find a friend's place and get an audition in, So these systems of organization are so important because then you can follow up with people. If you go to an event and you have a note-taking app that tells you, okay, I met this person on this day, I learned these cool things about them, and you can actually follow up. You're building your own trajectory in a crazy, unpredictable world. So it's to have the parameters of organization even amidst the total spontaneity, and then to specialize in your message.
That's fantastic. So you're planning ahead for being spontaneous.
Correct.
That's genius. And I love that idea of having a kit in the car that at any given moment, you might need a change of clothes, you might need water. Like you've got to have stuff that you can take with you.
You just gave me an idea. This would actually sell in LA, the car kit for creatives. That's great. It started here. It's on camera.
Genius. The car. That's even a cool brand.
The car kit.
The car kit. But also you started that answer by talking about like how you get that connection with the people that you want to work with. I think this is really interesting. There's a spark in the eyes. There's a knowing. I've certainly found when I've met with potential collaborators, the primary factor for me has not been their capabilities, their experience, who they know. It's been that feeling of a sort of energetic connection. There is a spark. There's a knowing, like we're family. We're part of the same clan. We didn't know it, but we are. And that really is what carries the relationships through over time, right? And builds up those connections. I want to talk also about some more basic logistical challenges, and in particular technology. I know this is your background, Kylee. So my question here, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this in, any terms you like, but particularly technical terms. So you can answer how you like, even with mine. That's okay. You're amongst friends. But we draw the line at karaoke until later. So my question is, what are the obstacles that just have to be overcome when people are making a feature film project? So you're meeting people at all sorts of different levels in terms of their budgets, their resources, the scale of the team. But what do you find are things that if you skip it, you will pay the price later?
There are a number of things that I've seen people run into. So I was an editor for almost 10 years myself, and I worked in production technology at Netflix before Adobe. I also worked on TV in dailies and workflow. So I've seen people in all stages of their projects and at different budgets. And the thing that always comes back around is a lack of planning. From the tiniest short film to the biggest budget film, it's a lack of planning up front, particularly with post-production. All of us below the line people always kind of get the short end of the stick because all the money goes, it gets wrapped up in production and things like that. And then you get to the edit and you're like, oh, can you just make this work? If your film costs $2 million, why are you trying to rush the end where you're trying to make it great? You have the last opportunity to rewrite and make your film truly amazing and collaborate and have the space to think through what you captured and then what you actually want to show. And so often that part just gets wrapped up so fast. The other thing that I see, and this is on budgets of all scales, is a lack of planning for storing your media, which sounds really in the weeds. Okay.
They're very excited about storage.
Yes. It sounds really in the weeds, but my gosh, if you think about your film costs $100,000 and shoots for 10 days, that media that you are backing up to that one crappy hard drive you borrowed from somebody's brother-in-law is $10,000 worth of your value. And I've seen productions that at really shockingly high levels for network TV that were like, oh, here, have this drive, the cable, we have to wiggle it a little bit. Let's just pray it works. And so that's the sort of expression of a lack of planning for post-production that is very acute, but really it's overall, like plan camera test time. Nobody plans for time for the camera teams to get together and test things out and make sure that they know how to operate and things are working correctly. All the way through the workflow to the end, because the last thing you want to do is waste time solving technical problems instead of putting that money on the screen.
I'm smiling because everything you're saying there, I have paid the price on in the past, and now feel very strongly about, very agitated
Yes.
about. I paid my way through film school giving tech support in a call center, and I learned working in tech support. This is in IT industries. They say if you only have one copy of a file, you do not have the file, because without warning, drives can just go. You know, it's like an alien abduction. It's like you thought you had the file, and you're looking at the drive, and there's nothing on the drive. It's gone.
Yeah, not building in the time to do the backups, because if you shoot 8K on this beautiful camera that you're really obsessed with and love, and it looks gorgeous, there's going to be a time period where you need to back that footage up. Computers are only so fast. So I've been on indie productions where they're clearing the cards because they could only afford like 4 camera cards while I'm still backing it up. So technically it doesn't exist at all. And if that transfer fails, then
You're going to make me
Good
cry.
luck.
So,
I know.
so there's a pattern here, and Daniel touched on this beautifully as well, talking about the power and importance of preparation.
Yes.
I remember hearing, I forget his name now, Tim, he directed the first Deadpool film, but apparently he's a newcomer to the industry, but they let him direct the film because he had completely shot by shot mapped out the production and said, this is the film that I will make. And the studio said, well, we'd like that film to be made, so okay, go ahead. But it's an enormous amount of work, and this is something I know that Ramfis, you do a lot as well. I'd like to hear, actually, this is a really interesting subject. Do you guys have anything else to say about critical component, like things you just have to do to make sure a film works? What are your horror stories?
So on my first feature, I know we're talking about first feature films, they went through that nightmare because it was a New York movie, but a lot of the talent was in LA, and I guess they all flew out to shoot, and whoever was doing the IT didn't back it up, and we lost all of that footage. So, part of how I got that first feature, I think this website is still around, mandy.com, went on mandy.com, they were looking for a producer, the film was partially shot, they went over budget, they ran out of money, like everything you can imagine, and we had to like recreate it. So I became the casting director. I was the hotel manager, booker, just everything you can imagine to get the thing done at the bottom line. And just so many things had gone wrong in terms of overspending on that particular project. And I just remember that there were times where I felt like my career was going to end. In particular, one of our lead actors, was promised a deal. It was at the time with ICM, that was his reps. And in his contract, he was owed X amount of money, and when you shoot in a different location, you have to give like an allowance or stipend or whatever it's called. And part of his deal, he had to be put in this like really fancy hotel. And I remember talking to this actor the first time, and I was telling him, "Oh my God, I loved your work. I saw you in this like." Period piece. It reminded me of like Braveheart, and he's like, they paid me pennies on it. I'm like, really, they did? And here I am. I have to tell this guy that I have to cut his pay, and I didn't know what to do. Do I tell him? Do I not tell him? I'm in with the actor. So I told his reps. I didn't tell him. And of course, when it came time to close his deal, the reps pretended like I never told him that. So I became the bad guy. And I think on the 25th hour, like the deal closed. He said he would still do it. He was really pretty pissed. The other thing is that we had to put him in this really fancy hotel, and I didn't really know how to do. I didn't have the budget in New York City to do that. So the good thing is that he's British. I called the hotel and I said, hey, I have this actor coming in. Is there, anything that you guys can do? And they're like, well, if he does social media for us, then yeah, we'll give a, I'm like, done, deal, done, So I called, my filmmaker and they're like, Ramfis, like, that's not in the contracts. His reps are not going to agree to it. And I'm like, well, this was the only way to kind of get it through. And they were not okay with it. So I'm like, well, you guys want me to produce it, you figure it out, at that point. And no one wanted to figure it out. So, on the first day when I had to pick him up from the airport, I was the guy that had to pick him up from the airport. And I apologized, for not telling him that he had to take this pay cut. He was pretty cool about it. I'm like, he's like, anything, for the film. I'm like, well, speaking of anything, I signed you up to do social media for your hotel. And I was waiting for him to like go crazy. And he was really cool about it. He's like, all right, I'll do it, So I learned a lot, through the ropes on that first film. Also really taking really good care of your crew. Our cinematographer also was flown out from LA to New York. I remember it was our second to last night filming, and he wasn't feeling well. There was something wrong with his health that had happened away from the production, and he had asked production to basically cover it. And technically, we should not have. But it's our second last night of filming. It was a big scene with all of our talent, and everyone else was telling him, no, I know we didn't have the money, but we have to make it work, So long story short, I agreed to something that we didn't have. We were able to get it shot, and because I came to him from a place of empathy and compassion and humanity, he never brought it up, and he went through his own insurance for the legal things. So these are a few things I went through on that first feature film. It was like hell and back,
So this is a very powerful lesson. One of the things that I picked up years ago is how amazing it is to have uncomfortable conversations. And I love uncomfortable conversations because they immediately stop being uncomfortable. And if you can approach them with honesty and authenticity, and this is something that's come up in a lot of the answers throughout the session here today. Okay, I just saw the time, so I'm going to go faster. Andrea, what will you never do again when making a film?
Several years ago, this was pre-pandemic, I was shopping around a new feature film that they'd sent the script. They sent me the script. I loved it. It was a historical fiction film on a real event in Mexican history. And what I didn't know at the time was the importance of seeing the list of people that the project has already gone to. I had asked the question early on in the process, but almost said, "Oh, have other people seen it?" Yeah, and they were kind of vague. The two, and they were experienced filmmakers. They had certainly age and experience over me, so I just went, "Oh, okay." So I rallied my connections in Mexico. I thought this is a very sellable project. This is great. The whole presentation got done, and it looked great and packaged. But then I got my top connection in Mexico. He liked the project, and we took it to one of the great studios. Because what they wanted was, this is an American production. They wanted to partner with a production in Mexico and do that kind of international alliance to give legitimacy to the project. So what I had at the time was not that much experience as a producer, but I had experience as an actor, having a lot of connections, especially in my home country. And so I took it to this producer, we took it to this big studio, and they'd already seen the project, and not only that, they had terrible rapport with the two people that were attached, or that brought the project to me, and I didn't know that. So what I learned from it was always do your research on people and how they might know each other, ask the right questions in order to just gauge, because, and also personally for you, make sure that you always operate with integrity with any connections that you have, because if, people do remember things even years later, and you never want to burn bridges in this industry, of course, but it's okay to mess up as well. I'm not saying like if you just did something that, and at that time I just felt very embarrassed. I didn't think I did anything bad, but at the same time, research is your friend. So that's what I would say is the biggest lesson I learned was, okay, I'm always going to act with integrity. I'm always going to present what I believe is a good project, and I'm going to forgive myself when these little steps in the road don't go as planned.
I always forget the name of the American author who said something like, the great thing about always telling the truth is that you never need to remember anything.
Yeah.
And I was speaking about this concept of integrity with the team recently, actually, that people can tell, and losing, when people lose respect for your integrity, it's kind of a one-way trip, right? They're very unlikely to trust you again. But it's no problem if you make a mistake. If you made a mistake and you own it, and you say, well, obviously I didn't intend to do that, but oops, I need help now, people will see that it actually is a bonus because they see your authenticity. I got a similar sort of question for you, Kylee. What do they not teach people at film school that you wish they were taught? There you go.
I mean, I went to undergrad for video production, but I didn't go to a traditional film school. So in this program, they taught us how to use tools, basic theory, things like that. But I think what is lacking in film schools is really an understanding of how to build an entire brand, and then how to leverage available technology to take different routes to get your movie made, or to just be a visual storyteller in any way that might lead to then having a feature film. So I think that film schools are also built around this idea of an auteur that's going to be like the leader, and it's all their vision. But the reality is that films are all this massive collaboration, and it needs to be from the planning stage to production to post. You have to have people around that you're willing to work with, and that the best ideas will come from brainstorming solutions together. And I think one way from a technology perspective that people can really benefit from this is to take advantage of the fact that tools are democratized now. You have a camera in your pocket, you can get access to tools from Adobe, but also others. There are many others, and as an editor, I've used everything. And just be more familiar with the technology so that when you get to the stages where the technology may be a little bit of a barrier to getting your story across, then that's not as much of a barrier. If you know just enough to be able to talk to the creative technologists or the creatives who are more technical on your movie, then you have a shared language, and you're not just totally like having your story in a black box and hoping for the best. And when you have access to these tools, you can also build your presence on social media in a more professional way. You can create a sense of momentum where you're able to build a timeline just enough that looks like, this looks like kind of a real movie. And so it becomes like, of course it's a movie. Why would I not fund it? Why would I not make that? Why would I not spend 6 to 12 months of my life spending 12 hours a day with you? So all of the tools at your disposal that are very affordable and you can get on consumer devices and laptops, learn about those. The best collaborations I saw, even at the highest levels, were with showrunners, post-producers, and line producers that had a respect and understanding of the technical. And I was so happy to be in conversations at Netflix with A-list actors who were showrunners and were going toe-to-toe with us about opinions on Dolby Vision and deriving SDR and metadata and stuff, because they really knew their stuff. Not in a way that was inappropriate, but in a way where they knew exactly how every dollar was going to be spent. And they were able to push back and say, what about this? And really contribute to the creativity at every opportunity. So I think that would be what is needed at film school.
Man, that was an awesome answer. Thank you. I keep being reminded of that old thing, you get 3 things, but you can only have 2. So it's fast, it's low cost, and it's high quality, and you have to pick 2.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits that indies often have is they've got the time. Yeah. So it's okay if it's slow, but you have to do the work. It's worth noting as well, just a quick salute to Adobe. Adobe has this fantastic, highly supportive community. If you get stuck with something and you're not sure how to do it, I mean, you can probably get an answer to a question in 20 minutes. If you go onto some of the social media platforms, it's really, really helpful. And I suppose the trick in terms of the technical challenges is just to begin, right?
Yes.
Don't wait for it to be perfect. I learned everybody's job en route to becoming a director. And one of the things I learned is that the production assistants, the runners on set, are the lifeblood of the production. Because the DP is not going to pick up that piece of paper on the floor, or if there's a water spill, someone could break their neck. The director of photography is going to be like, oh no, I'm busy with compositions. So I've learned to be very respectful. So when you're working on a new project, are there any things that are just like every single time you have to do this? Daniel mentioned earlier, just pay the money, get the insurance, right? Get the permits. You don't want to be shut down during a production. So what for you are the must-haves for a film?
Wow, that's so tough. I'm thinking more on the earlier side in terms of the development. I go through such a thorough process. So for example, I have this script that we've been developing since the end of 2020, and it's period, there's a lot of history, and I have an amazing team that I'm working with, and one of the things that we've really doubled down on is the history, of it. So, for example, it took us 6 months to find the right historian, and then just going through the process with her in terms of her reading the material, giving us feedback, us looking at the feedback, and then talking to the writer, really going through the process to make sure that we have something that's authentic, that is accurate, that I feel that is fun and that's creative. And at the same time, I'm thinking in terms of like, where is it gonna land? Like, is this like a theatrical? Is it a streamer? Making sure that it has a commercial viability. Like I do that with every film that I do that is mine, that I own or my company owns, like going through that thorough process. So right now we have a really good script, and I'm meeting with the studio, I think on Wednesday about it. They haven't seen the script. They've known about it since summer of last year. And my team and I have talked about it, and we're like, we're not gonna show them the script because it's really good, but we want to make sure all the history is correct before they actually see the script, and we probably won't be ready to share it till later in the year, and I think that'll make it more, because what's happening now, I speak with a lot of my friends that are at sales agencies or in distribution, and you all have seen that, like where they've pumped massive amounts of money into these movies and they're not seeing a return, and the focus is not the quantity that they've been doing, it's really on the quality. I was talking to my manager last week and she's like, there's, HBO is passing on, projects with, like showrunners with high level of credibility and talent, and that doesn't move the needle anymore. They want to make sure the quality is there. So she said, let's double down on the quality. Let's not take it out anywhere we're ready. Let's not take it out anywhere yet. Let's make sure it's in top tier. Like every I is dotted, every T is crossed. And I say for the most part, I do that with I do that across every film that I've made and every film that I'm planning to make in the future, to go through that thorough, process to make sure it's as perfect as possible, because the cheapest film that you can shoot is on paper.
That is such fantastic advice. So I suppose do the work, right? And I see with a lot of independent filmmakers mentoring newcomers to the industry that they want to wing it and also hope it'll be great quality. And that's a really unlikely outcome. Okay, so we're pretty much out of time, but I have one silly question to see whoever wants to answer this. As we are at the Da Vinci Film Festival, art is never finished, only abandoned. Discuss.
I think the greatest works of art are collaborative in nature. Even the ones that are painters, they're collaborating with actual nature to feel inspired, or with humans if they do portraits. And I think for me, when I work on something with other people that just want to tell a cool story, I always want to work with my friends. And that's where I feel a project is truly never finished, because the stories, the memories are all there in the journey of making it. I think a project is just as much about completing it and deriving profit from it as much as it is in the journey of the creation of it. Because the journey of creation, you sometimes find things out you didn't plan to be there but are actually better ideas in the end, even if it was a budget thing. And so when you're working with friends, as well as business partners and collaborators, you just, there's like a little bit of mind reading that when you work repeatedly with them, it starts to happen. And then you do the next project and you go, remember when in that last project we did, let's never do that again, let's try it this way. And I think that exchange of ideas only move forward, and when you work with good people, you see possibility in all things around you, and you keep that momentum going in your own mind, and you think, oh yeah, we could have done that with that scene, but we ran out of time, or but let's do it again, but better in the next thing, and then it keeps going.
That's awesome. My favorite story along those lines is Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail. And they did not have the budget for horses, so they got coconut halves and had everybody skipping across the landscape with literally coconuts in their hands, and no horses. And it became one of the best parts of the film.
I actually directed a production of Into the Woods for stage, and we also did not have the budget to build fake horses to go across the stage, so we also used coconuts as a reference.
What is it? Necessity is the mother of all invention. Okay, so we are out of time, but I wanted to give an opportunity for maybe one or two really quick questions. So speak at 150 words per minute.
I'm just kind of curious, like when you you have the script that you love now, right? But it probably wasn't, you probably didn't love it when you first saw it. Can you just elaborate a little bit on the process from you saw a script, you liked it, you liked the bones of the story, but now we got to make it so we love it. What does that look like?
So just to summarize for the cameras here and the audience at the back, so the question is, when you have a script at the beginning of the process, could you elaborate very quickly on the process of turning that into a screenplay that you love?
So this actually starts in London. This my answer to your story. I went to this event called London Focus. It's typically in person in December. They did it virtually in 2020. There was only one screenwriter of color that was there. I was very intrigued by him. I asked to do a Zoom with him. We met on Zoom, and he told me about this story, which was a miniseries. And I loved the idea, but I'm like, dude, I don't make television. I'm a film guy. Would you be open to making it as a feature? So he thought about it and said yes. And my team and I started to revamp his miniseries into a feature. And we went through multiple drafts. And his agency got involved at one point. And, if there's any agents in the room, no offense. But I basically said, a lot of times agents don't do any work and they take credit. If you guys are going to work with me on this and you're going to take a fee, you guys have to help me package it and finance it. And he was one of the partners at Gersh, and he said yes. He lined up the financing actually back in 2021 for the film from, I want to say Denmark, because the story takes place in Denmark and St. Croix. So at that point, the two other young ladies I was working with, they know story really well, and we were having issues with the final act because we didn't have the actual correct history. So at that point, we sent it out to multiple readers from different ages and brackets, and the feedback kept coming back the same. So I knew there was something wrong. So at that point, we said we had to get a historian on board, and we were looking for an historian all over Europe until everyone kept pointing to this one woman that was really hard to get a hold of, and it took 6 months to get a hold of her, and she loved the idea. She's never worked in a movie capacity, and I think she really enjoyed, it's basically about the first black man in Iceland that ever appears in Iceland. And the family is like a legacy family, and she saw the value in it. And, I brought it to other, I want to say, respected filmmakers that really gravitated to the idea. So the thing is that when I develop a project, I don't like to chase people. I don't like to chase money. I always say this, no one likes to miss a moving train. So the way I'm setting it up is that the studio I'm meeting with, they've been tracking it for, since July of last year. They're meeting with me because they want to know more about it. I'm not stringing them along. I'm going to let them know about the updates and everything. But the thing is that I have options, and I know it's a really good piece. With everything that's going on in the world, it hits a lot of social issues around race, about class. And now film is, I feel, a global thing. It's a global project. It's not an American story. It deals with things in the Caribbean, in Denmark, in Africa. It hits all these points. So from a branding and strategy point, we've built it to that as well, where a brand can come in and possibly finance it, like Mattel with Barbie, for example, something along that. Or I can bring it to the financier in Scandinavia, or I could do it with the studio I'm meeting with this Thursday. So that's why I've been very slow to take the time and make sure it's picture perfect. Everything is dotted, and it's a very, like I said, it's one of the best scripts that I have read. It just needs to be tweaked historically, and then it's a slam dunk.
This has been phenomenal for me. It's been emotional. I'd like to...
Emotional?
Kylee Pena. Well, it's always great giving you a hug. I'd like to thank Kylee Pena, Andrea Sweeney, Ramfis Myrthil. Thank you so much. Big round of applause, please.